Hello, good evening and welcome to Aro Ling Cardiff. The teachings tonight are given by Ngakma Nor'dzin and they're on the subject of Kyil'khor.
So the word that some of you might be more familiar with is mandala, but I'll explain in a minute why I'm using the word Kyil'khor. Something that Ngakpa Rinpoche often says, and I think it's always worth thinking about and remembering it again, is that Buddhism is a religion of method, not a religion of truth. So Buddhism teaches methods that bring us to be able to experience reality, rather than what we currently experience, which is close to reality, but is slightly skew-if. And one of our problems is that our experience of duality and delusion is only a little bit different to what we would experience if we were awakened and realized beings. And it's that closeness that in many ways makes it so difficult for us to awake, so difficult for us to become realized. But this quality of non-duality sparkling through because it is so close is one of the reasons why so many of the teachings that are given in Buddhism, we can see how they function in everyday life in a deluded style, and then we can learn how to just view that differently or do something to change our relationship with that in order to bring it in line with Buddhist practice, with the methods of Buddhism. So often the methods, there's a sort of familiarity about them, an ease about them that makes them approachable. And this is the extraordinary skill of Buddhism, that there's nothing you have to adopt, there's nothing you are told you have to believe in this, else you can't be a Buddhist. Everything has this natural quality about it, that we can find our own way into it through practice. And I think that teachings on Kyil'khor are one of these methods. Now, the reason I'm using the word Kyil'khor is because I think mandala is a word that has kind of got out there in terms of existing beyond the sphere of spiritual practice. For instance, I have a crochet book that is called Crocheted Mandalas. And they're beautiful, but it's just that word is out there in that way. Whereas Kyil'khor is not such a familiar word, so it kind of retains that quality of still being in the sphere of spirituality and Buddhism. And also, I have not studied Sanskrit, whereas I have studied Tibetan a little bit. And so I can tell you that Kyil'khor is made up of two words, Kyil and Khor. And Kyil means center, essence or focus, and Khor means periphery or whatever is surrounding that center, that essence, the retinue, if you like, or the phenomena that dance around whatever is in the center of the Kyil'khor. So I'm going to start by talking about everyday experience of Kyil'khor, so that we can then look at how we can adjust that experience through Buddhist method to transform our everyday experience into awakening experience. We usually put ourselves in the center of our Kyil'khor. This is our ordinary everyday experience, is that we're in the center and everything revolves around us. So there will be beings around us that we feel close to. This could be a partner, a sibling, close relatives, your children, colleagues, friends. There are beings around you whom you have a close relationship with, and so they feel very much they're in the inner chamber of your Kyil'khor. You're there in the centre and they're close to you, around you. And those are the beings that we will nurture, that we will want to keep in our Kyil'khor, because we feel supported by them. We feel supported by our relationship with them, by our friendship, by the closeness of loved ones. So they're in the inner chambers of our Kyil'khor. And then there are those beings that actually figure just as strongly in our Kyil'khor, but they figure strongly because we don't like them being there. So those are the people we don't get on with, the people we find difficult. Perhaps it's the boss who makes your life hard work, or it's the awkward neighbour who is always doing something that makes your life difficult, making too much noise. I guess we're the neighbours that make too much noise on a Monday evening anyway, but neighbours who just perhaps make life a little less comfortable than it could be if you had an easier to get along with neighbour. And then of course there are those that exist that don't appear to feature in your Kyil'khor. So they're just generally ignored because they don't seem to be something you want to nurture, and they don't seem to be something you want to repulse, to get rid of out of your Kyil'khor. So you may recognise the three root misconceptions here: attraction, aversion and indifference. And this is another magical aspect of Buddhism that I absolutely love, is that many of the teachings are presented in many ways. I think it's like really trying to hammer this teaching into our rather thick block of wood heads, that we have to have these things presented to us in lots of different ways. Or maybe it's just that we're all deluded and neurotic in different ways, and so different methods of presenting our neurotic existence, our neurotic viewpoint, work better for us than perhaps other methods do. So we could look on this nurturing those that are close to us as attraction, those that we would like to get rid of out of our Kyil'khor as aversion, and those that don't appear to feature in our Kyil'khor at all as the indifference that we have to those who don't impact upon us. Now there's another way that we build up a Kyil'khor, that we experience Kyil'khor, and that is in terms of our opinions and our preferences and our activities. So we'll put a lot of energy into being part of things that support those things. So as well as having this Kyil'khor of loved ones, people we don't get along with and so on, we'll also have a Kyil'khor of people who share our opinion, perhaps share our political opinion, or share a love of science fiction. We're very much a science fiction family. We're all into science fiction. But some people hate it. Some people really dislike science fiction. Perhaps you're a craft person, and so you'll have a Kyil'khor of craft activities and books that you share with people and information that you share with people. There's quite a few YouTubers that I subscribe to for things like Tunisian knitting and crocheting. So that's a different sort of Kyil'khor, in that I don't know those people, and yet they are part of my sphere of being. And then, of course, there are those who are part of your sphere of being in a way that you dislike. So an example I gave a few weeks ago is of Twitter, when the way some people respond, the example I gave before was Mark Dreyford, the Prime Minister. He's not called a Prime Minister, is he? The First Minister of Wales. And I'm a bit of a fan of his. I think he works really hard. He's a very nice, ordinary man, and he doesn't always get it right, but I do think he tries. And I get really irate about some of the negative comments that he gets on Twitter, that it's like whatever he tries to do is never going to be right for these people, and they respond to him in what I think is a very rude way, as though they know him personally and they have the right to be rude and offensive to him, and I find that works me up. I know a lot of people won't think that he does a good job, but that is also part of your Kyil'khor, that there are people who disagree with you, that don't share your preferences, your likes and dislikes, your political leanings, and so on and so forth, and are not interested in the same activities in you. So we could say that that's the same as the previous example in terms of the people in our sphere, that we nurture some, we wish to repulse others, and we don't care about the ones that don't impact on us. But I think the difference with opinions and preferences is that there's a tendency for those to become more of a definition for us. So we may not choose the Kyil'khor of people, we just engage with it. But we do actually actively create our opinions and our activities and our preferences. And so in that sense we're creating a realm. And I think it's quite interesting to look at Kyil'khor in terms of the realms, that if you become too solid in your opinions, then there's the danger of being stuck in the animal realm, where you can only get along with the herd that happens to have the same view and opinion of you. So you get stuck in that animal realm mentality. Or perhaps you become very competitive with beings who do share your opinions and activities, so that you're trying to do better than them, so you might get stuck in the jealous God realm. And I'm sure you could expand on this yourself and follow this through and look at the ways that working with your Kyil'khor or be developing your Kyil'khor can make you get stuck in a realm. So those are two ways that we can become too solid about the Kyil'khor, become too solid about us being the centre of the Kyil'khor. But I think realistically our ordinary existence is always that we're in the centre, and that doesn't have to be a problem as long as we don't create that centrality as a reference point. And again, to give an everyday example that we can all relate to, there are areas of our life where, although we may still feel at the centre of our Kyil'khor, we actively and openly engage in allowing others to be more important to focus than us. So we experience our centrality through our focus on someone who is peripheral, who is in an outer room. An example of this would be when we fall in love, or when we are in love, that we allow the person that we're in love with to become more central in our Kyil'khor, and we relate to them in a way that is like enlightened activity. So we want to enjoy what they enjoy. We want them to be happy. We want to be able to make their life more pleasurable through our own activities and through our interaction with them. If you don't have a partner, then maybe you have that relationship with a very close friend or with your children. Certainly, I think you can notice this as a nurturing parent, that you often put your child in the centre of your Kyil'khor and allow yourself to become more peripheral, because that is a natural thing that a parent does, that sometimes the needs of the child have to come before the needs of the parent. So it isn't beyond ordinary experience to experience Kyil'khor in the sense of allowing whatever is in your dimension, in your periphery, to threaten, you could say, or challenge, or stop your centrality in that Kyil'khor becoming too fixed. You remain fluid in terms of your centrality. So yes, you are experiencing what you experience, but if there is someone who is loved, then it's possible to feel empathetic joy for them. You're happy when they are successful, even though that has nothing to do with your own success. You want that person to be happy, you want that person to be well, even though that doesn't really make any difference to you as the central being, and so on and so forth. In terms of your children, we had 2 sons, and there was always a sort of equanimity there, that there might be some things you were able to appreciate more easily about one child than the other, but nevertheless you were always able to put either child in the centre when their needs needed to have priority. There wasn't any sense of favouring one above the other. So I would say that the 4 immeasurables become very much evident in terms of Kyil'khor when you are able to allow yourself to move in and out of the centre, or allow oneself to be in the centre, but with that being a fluid experience that is coloured by what is outside you. So there are 2 approaches, I think, to looking at Kyil'khor in terms of spiritual practice. The first one is this quality of remaining in the centre, but allowing yourself to be always totally influenced by whatever is outside you, and whatever is the need of the situation outside you. So it's almost like you're continually flickering between centre or periphery, that you're continually looking at what a situation needs, what's the appropriate response in this situation, what am I perceiving from the periphery, and you're moving between those and avoiding becoming fixed as the most important thing, the most central thing, the thing that has to always be given priority. But then Vajrayana in particular uses this idea of centre and periphery, this idea of Kyil'khor, in an extraordinary, skillful way to enable us to move towards realization. And that is that Vajrayana puts the Yidam, or the teacher, in the centre of the Kyil'khor. I say Yidam or teacher, but in fact they are the same. The teacher is at the centre if you have a teacher. The Yidam is at the centre if you're practicing the Yidam. But the teacher is actually the manifestation of the Yidam for the student, because the teacher gives transmission of the experience of the Yidam, and the student experiences the Yidam as the manifestation of the teacher. So through putting the teacher and the Yidam in the centre, one naturally becomes peripheral to the Kyil'khor. And this is an incredibly skillful thing to do, because putting a realized being at the centre means that you have immediately removed yourself from a fundamental delusion of being the most important being in the world, of being this I that has to be supported and everything else is peripheral to this I. Through putting the teacher and the Yidam in the centre of the Kyil'khor, then everything that one understands and experiences through interaction with the teacher and through practicing the Yidam becomes a reflection of oneself in the periphery of one's own Kyil'khor. So you encourage whatever supports the teacher, that could be supports the physical existence of the teacher, or supports the idea of the teacher as the central focus of one's practice. You encourage whatever supports the Yidam as the central focus. So you recognize when you're not behaving in a style that is reflective of the Yidam as the centre of your Kyil'khor. When you're being an idiot, when you're being unkind, when you're being selfish, when you're not managing to be generous, then you can recognize, you get a feeling, I always get a feeling that is just somehow uncomfortable, that enables me to recognize that I'm doing this, that I've suddenly become the most important being in the world again, instead of the Yidam or the teacher being the centre of my Kyil'khor. And if you can start to sort of spot that feeling that niggles, that feels uncomfortable, then you can relax and allow the Yidam and the teacher to become central again, and feel relaxed about being peripheral again, and let go of that sort of friction of wanting to grab a reference point and wanting to be central. You, by placing the teacher in the centre of your Kyil'khor, or the Yidam and the Yidam in the centre of the Kyil'khor, you want to discourage anything that hinders their centrality. So you want to practice because you want to strengthen that experience of the Yidam and the teacher at the centre of the Kyil'khor. You want to reduce your neurotic tendencies. You want to become aware of what duality is, so that you can relax into the non-duality of your sense of yourself as peripheral and your teacher as central, as a non-duality. And nothing is ignored in terms of the teacher and the Yidam as central to the Kyil'khor, because nothing is irrelevant. Everything that can be experienced is relevant to perception and response. everything is relevant to the experience of the dimension of the teacher and the yidam. So I think viewing the Kyil'khor in this way and allowing the experience of oneself as central to soften, to become less rigid, to become more fluid, to become more like a cloud that is in the center and then it moves into the periphery and then maybe it manifests in the center and then it moves. That it's this fluidic quality of moving between those states. So yes, it's me that's hearing something that I'm hearing, but that moment of hearing, I'm also peripheral to whatever created the sound. We can put the sound in the center of the Kyil'khor and be peripheral to experiencing that sound. And through doing that, we could perhaps have a direct experience rather than feeling you've got to somehow own the sound. I am having this sound, therefore I own this sound. Whereas actually you just happen to have the apparatus that enables you to perceive the sound. You don't own it. The sound is simply there. And so moving between outer and inner, central or peripheral, reduces, softens this fixation with always being the most important thing in the universe. We don't need to cling to reference points so much if we can allow this fluid quality. So if we have an opinion and our Kyil'khor touches somebody who is opposed to that opinion, we can pop them into the center for a bit and just entertain their opinion from that peripheral perspective. And that reduces the need to feel threatened by it because we allow them to be in the center. Once we're peripheral, then we're immediately less focused on ourselves as having a different opinion, and we can look at, well, maybe that's actually quite interesting that there's that different of opinion. Could you, as the focus, as the center of the Kyil'khor, could you say more about that? Why do you have this opinion that is so different to my opinion? And you could perhaps have an interesting conversation about that. Maybe you can't. Some people, it isn't possible to explore things in that way. But if it doesn't work, that doesn't matter because you've had that open-hearted intention to try and allowed yourself to let go of your opinion being owned and therefore really, really important as a reference point in the center of your Kyil'khor. One of the problems of reference points and putting oneself in the center of your Kyil'khor and surrounding yourself with Kyil'khors that are harmonious with your own is that you start to feel secure, and so everything becomes very rigid. And the danger of that is that you start to regard the harmony of your Kyil'khor with somebody else's Kyil'khor or many, many beings' Kyil'khor as truth. And when you start to believe something is truth, then you have to defend it. So this becomes dangerous because you have put yourself in a potentially embattled situation. Because when something comes along that challenges that opinion, that view, that reference point, then if you in the center of your Kyil'khor cannot then move to the outside, then you have to defend it. And then you're back into the sphere of attraction, aversion and indifference and being in a realm that has to protect itself. Another danger of sharing Kyil'khor with others in terms of opinion, of preferences and so on, is that it starts to feel powerful, and you can miss the point of that power is not real. It's a power of numbers, and again there's a danger in that when something comes along that seems to challenge that shared state, then that threatens that feeling of power and security. And so once again you're going to find yourself slipping into the center of the Kyil'khor and having to be aggressive, having to repulse that attack on the nature of your Kyil'khor. So putting the Lama and the Yidam in the center of your Kyil'khor is enlightened activity, is awakened activity. And any time that we start to feel somehow, oh, there's this me, I am so important, I am so fixed there, try and find a way to pop yourself out into the periphery and put something else into the center, either through a visualization of the teacher, through a visualization of the Yidam, through thinking, what would my teacher do in this situation? Would they say this unpleasant thing I'm about to say? And usually the answer is going to be no, and so then you try and let go of that unpleasant thing that you feel you wanted to say. And also by putting the teacher in that central place, things can just become lighter and softer and not so focused on oneself. I'd just like to finish with a little quotation. We're working on Rinpoche and Khandro Dechin's latest book at the moment for Arrow Books Worldwide, which is a book of quotations. It's called Tracts of the Sun, and this one came up most fortuitously when I was reading a chapter yesterday. The Kyil'khor of Lama as Yidam is the ground from which all potentialities arise. This ground is the vital, self-luminous seedbed of creativity. The elements arise as a matrix of creativity from the empty ground of existence itself, as a display of the limitless qualities of non-dual activity. So when you hear the word mandala, remember that all these geometric patterns that one sees that are expressions of mandala are all pictorial ways of bringing into a geometric pictorial image this sense of center and periphery. And remember to allow others to be in the center of your Kyil'khor sometimes, and things will go much better.
Thank you very much indeed. I do love the way that through the method of Kyil'khor we get to see something of ourselves, that it teaches us how much we perceive from our own point of view, and that everyone else is doing it as well.
That is a very good point. That if you think of everybody out there, they're all their Kyil'khor, and then there's me thinking, oh, but I'm the only important one.
And really, we spend more time in terms of being peripheral to people than we do spend time being central. It reminds me of the way people used to look out at the stars and look out at the sun and start off from the default idea, well, the Earth's in the middle of all that,
yes.
because it seriously looks like everything's orbiting the Earth. And it comes as a shock to people to find the Earth isn't the centre of the universe, and we're just a small blob on the periphery. And so it comes as a shock to us as individuals when we realise that with all these things going round, we're actually more peripheral than we are central to things.
I quite like that. We're just a small blob, okay? Just remember that and everything will be fine.
Wonderful.